Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to IQ's Take.
Hi,
IQ's
Q's
Take.
Take.
Today I'm with Hunter and May. Do you guys want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Hunter Kief. I'm a tech associate with EEVM, and I'm also a first year at Emory University studying computer science.
Hi, my name is May Zhou. I'm also a first year at Emory. I'm studying business and environmental science, and I'm an IQ associate in EEVM.
And I'm Amanda. I'm also an IQ associate with May, and I'm also a freshman. So to start us off, Hunter, can you talk us through what your job is and what your situation's like these days?
Yeah. So I am a front end manager I've been kind of on the front lines throughout the entire COVID situation. Meanwhile, also attending school online. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so just one kind of question, just hearing about the crisis or the pandemic side of your work, how has your job changed from before the pandemic? Or do you think it was gradual, or did you see like a sudden shift from before to now?
Yeah, so it was definitely so it was really strange how it changed. Because at first it was very gradual, but I'd say like those first couple weeks it was like while it was just still in Seattle and it wasn't really spreading across the United States, it was a very gradual change. You know, people really were kind of underplaying the whole situation. So, you know, they started to buy some groceries, like, oh, you know, maybe we'll have a stay-at-home order, like maybe something will happen eventually, but they weren't really freaked out. And then as cities started to shut down, and the cases started to ramp up a little bit, it happened very quickly. So within a period of about a week, week and a half, we went from just like slightly above average business to just being absolutely slammed every day as people started panicking and panic buying everything that they could.
Yeah.
So my job really changed from being just like very casual management, just kind of making sure that my associates were like getting breaks and just like giving good customer service to like making sure that everyone was actually like safe and making sure that we had product on the shelf constantly and making sure that people weren't overbuying as much as they could. So yeah, it was a big change in what I actually had to do on the front.
Sure. So where are you working right now? I guess where are you
Yeah.
located?
Okay. So I'm located in a city called Crossville. It's in
Okay.
Tennessee. So we've not really had like a giant spike in cases like other states such as New York City or California. But we've gradually been seeing a lot more across the state of Tennessee. It's been getting really intense, and I think we're expected to hit our peak within about a week or two.
Yeah,
So
it's tough.
So has it been intense every single day, or has it like slowed down at all, or is it just the same? Lots of people coming in every single day.
Um, yeah, so we are actually so we have yet to start limiting the amount of people coming to the store or anything yet. We just haven't gotten to that point. But yeah, it's been pretty intense almost every single day. I've just noticed in the past like 2 or 3 days that things have started to die down a little bit. But I mean, over the past couple weeks, I've been seeing over course of my shifts are typically about 9 hours long. So from the time I get in until the time I leave, it's pretty much lines on every single lane that I have open. 3, 4 people in a line, and it's pretty nonstop.
How often do you work a week?
I work about 40 hours,
Ooh,
give or take a few. So
that's hard work. Thank you, Hunter.
Yeah, thank you
Like
so
I
much.
appreciate it.
really important during these times. And do you have a specific crazy encounter that you've experienced from working on the front lines?
I have definitely had a few. I actually had one yesterday. So a lot of it has to do with product. That's like the big concern
Mhm.
right now. Is everybody's really scared about the supply chain. One of the biggest issues that we have is people come in, they're saying, when are you going to get this? When are you going to get this? And the answer is always, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
So I actually had a gentleman call me the other night, and he was complaining, I guess, about how he had driven to the wrong store to pick up some hand sanitizer that had apparently been put to the side for him, which is interesting because we've been making a point not to hold
Mhm.
things aside for people, and kind of doing things on a first come first served basis. So he goes to talk to me, and he's saying all these things about how he drove to this wrong store, and now he's been driving like 24 miles from wherever he was from to try to get hand sanitizer, and he wanted to make sure that we had it, and I had to tell him like, no sir, no one's been holding this to the side for you. And so then he gets like really angry with me. And as a result, it turned into, he was saying like, yeah, I've driven all this time, and it's been 24 miles. And then he said, as compensation, he wanted me to give him a jar of pickles,
Just a free jar of pickles?
That's
which is
really
the strangest,
interesting.
which was like one of the strangest things I've ever heard.
So oddly
Um,
specific.
yeah, well, exactly. That's why I'm like, pickles. Okay. We ended up telling him no, but it was one of those things that just made you like, wow, people are really getting strange right now.
Yeah.
I've also had a couple people who like completely deny the whole thing, um, which has been a really weird one. I've had some people who are like conspiracy theorists who are telling me that like the whole thing's a hoax, and like, yeah, it's been really interesting. And that's just a couple examples. If I think of another story as this goes on, I'll try to
Yes.
interject. Yeah. So what was really interesting is a lot of the stockpiling happened kind of in like the really early stages. So like I was saying, like at first a lot of people weren't taking it seriously, especially where I am, being so far away from Washington, where we had that point of like first contact. So everyone kind of like heard about it, and like I said, they were thinking like, oh, maybe we'll like be stuck at home for a little bit. So they decided that the toilet paper was the first thing to go. Um,
Yeah.
and so nobody at this point in time, nobody had realized that this was going on. Like it wasn't widespread on social media that toilet paper was going everywhere. But I noticed in my first couple days back to work after knowing that I wasn't going to be going back to school, that like every single customer was buying toilet paper. And I'm not talking like one big like case of it. I'm talking they were buying like 3, 4, 5 like cases of toilet paper as they checked out. And obviously hand sanitizer went, rice, beans, eggs, milk. It just slowly, like the list started growing longer and longer every day. Um, and I guess from a certain perspective, like I understood where they were coming from with this fear, like they might be stuck at home, they might not be allowed to go to the grocery store. They weren't really sure what was going on. Um, but I think what people don't realize is that when put on the shelf, everyone talks about the mystical like back of the store where we keep everything, but in reality, we kind of only get as much as we think we're going to sell. So we had what stock we did, everyone bought it, and then we only received our regular shipments. So we weren't ordering more of it, we weren't ordering any less of it, we were ordering the exact same amount. Well, everyone started increasing the frequency at which they started ordering this because it started flying off the shelves a little faster than expected. And then it got to the point where the warehouses that actually held all of this and distributed everything had nothing left. And that's kind of when the shortage first started. And none of us really realized until we went to put in orders, and the warehouse was like, oh, we don't have any. And then the warehouse couldn't get any. And I don't think people realize that when you stockpile like that, it affects the entire supply chain all the way up, not just at the store level, but all the way up to the factories that make this stuff.
Right.
And so even right now, I mean, even though the hype has still kind of like died down a little bit and people aren't really stockpiling as much, I'm still not able to really get much on the shelves. I think yesterday was the first day I've actually seen it last more than like 12 hours. So which is crazy to think about, like a product only being on a shelf for 12 hours out of the day and then being completely gone.
Right.
So
is your store doing the one limit rule?
So yeah, we have implemented the one limit rule. We actually did that about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and like I said, even with a one limit rule, it's still we still can't catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. I just think that people really, really need to realize that stores don't really keep as much of something as you think, and that when you buy as much as you do, when you stockpile like that, it really does affect all the way up the supply chain. And while you think, yeah, if everyone stopped buying it, like it'll be back tomorrow, and the reality is it might take us months to get the supply chain back up and running.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely. I think it's really interesting hearing your perspective, because I think a lot of people tend to think things in stores just magically appear on the shelves or magically appear in storage. So I think it's great giving that advice that's going on right now.
Yeah. Well, and see, and so that actually brings up another good point, which is I think a lot of people have noticed that stores have started changing hours and like shutting down and opening up later and earlier than normal. And the other thing that affects that is it takes time to get products off of a truck,
Mm-hmm.
and then taking those products off of the pallets that they come in, and then getting staff to actually unload that, go out, put it on the shelves, get it all prepared. So it even comes down to just having the manpower to stock different things as they run out. And that's really what became a problem as well. I remember about a week into everything, me and a couple other members of management actually got pulled onto the stock team instead of watching our department in the store, because there was so much product we had to put out in a single day. We were getting multiple truckloads of stuff a day, and on average, we keep about 2 people stocking per day. So yeah, so once we started, we ran out of like an entire aisle of rice, an entire aisle of beans, and like almost all the frozen food. Everything just started going way quicker than we could even physically put it on the shelf, not much less get a delivery for it.
Oh, that's really interesting to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was just watching a podcast the other day about how the problems of like the toilet paper crisis, it's like they physically can't produce that much right now at the factories. And then it's an even bigger problem of like they don't want to overproduce. And then after pandemic is over, and then people who stockpiled have too much toilet paper, they can't sell it.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's the interesting thing that too. So my store personally, and I know some other places have started to do this, we've actually implemented like a new refund policy across the store in addition to the limiting. So we've said, if you buy it not eating it, we're not going to take it back, because we realize that in the future, the prices are going to go way down on it, and we're actually going to take a loss and a huge hit.
Right.
If we can even put the product back on the shelf when you bring it back as well, because one of the big influences too has been, we don't know when that product goes to your house, whether or not it's going to be contaminated when it gets brought back into the store. So from personal experience, I'm a first generation low income student. So me taking up the job wasn't really me necessarily wanting to have a job, but needing to have a job in order to help support my family, because the reality is we didn't expect to have an extra mouth to feed in the house. So there's been some financial strain that has caused me to have to go back into work. So that's I feel like people really need to consider what they're going through, and I feel that some administration and some staff has been very understanding, but I think it's about really spreading the awareness that while some people are doing just fine holding up at home and they have plenty of time to study and keep their grades up, that the rest of us really can't do that. We have to go out and work. Some people don't have access to internet. They don't have a safe study space in their house. So I think keeping that in mind and such, that ask about your opinion on how the schools are handling things.
So given these new hardships that people have now had to face, from your perspective and experience, how would you like to see like the systems in power, like the government or our school, really react and implement new policies?
Yeah. So I feel like when it comes to government policy in particular, it's very difficult to say what is a good decision right now and what's a bad decision, because we really have never done anything like this and we don't know the effects of any decision we make right now. But I would like to see a little bit more worker protection, especially in essential areas. I feel like, personally, I feel like hazard pay should be something that retail associates and like healthcare professionals and stuff should be receiving at this time. And I know some places are doing it, but I feel like it should be something that is a little bit more mandated. And I also feel like, I know that there's a lot of economic aspects related, but I feel like there are a lot of businesses that are being deemed as essential right now that necessarily aren't really necessarily essential. You know, I've seen a lot of like quote unquote like home repair businesses that are really more just like selling cosmetics for a home, or like landscaping, that while it falls under that category of home improvement or home repair, it's not really doing that. But those people are still going out, they're being in contact with people. And I feel like some states are not necessarily doing enough as far as keeping people at home. I can speak from experience that the state of Tennessee, due to some constitutional elements within our state, we actually can't enforce a stay-at-home order at the state level. So while the governor of the state can come out and say, you know, you guys should stay home and we want to encourage that to happen, they can't force police departments to do anything. There can't really be any legal repercussions for leaving your house or doing essential things. So that's kind of on the government side of things, but I also feel that in the case of like schools, I feel like grading systems are a big issue right now. I know that there are a lot of schools that are talking about like universal pass systems, double A systems, and this whole other crazy assortment of different grading systems. And I feel like one of the things that a lot of schools have come to the consensus on is that, you know, giving pass fail is definitely something that students should have the option for. But I feel like a lot of schools are ignoring the kind of stress that comes with making that decision. I've heard a lot of students, especially like med students, talking out about how doing optional pass fail has made it really difficult for them because some med schools are saying that they're not going to take those pass fail credits, or they're going to kind of count them against them. And while that's true for that, you also have students who, I'll speak from myself, my grades are not exactly the same as they were when I left Emory as a result of working so much. They've obviously gone down, and while my teachers have worked with me and given me extensions and stuff, I just don't have the same amount of study time or the space to study in that I did before. So I went from having like mostly A's to having like some C's here and there. And while I could take some classes pass fail just to make sure my GPA doesn't get affected, it still puts me at a disadvantage because I'm not getting that GPA boost that I would have had if none of this had happened. And I can't really help the fact that I can't just stay at home and study nonstop every day.
Right. Yeah. It's. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. And I was just going to say that I, you know, I've shared this sentiment with some other people, and I've noticed that overwhelmingly a lot of people feel the same way, that as a result of COVID, they have not been able to keep their academics up as much as they did, and they feel negatively impacted because they can't make that decision as easily as some people would think they would.
I guess, do you have any additional things you'd like to share, how to help out essential workers during this time?
Anything you'd like to like tell your or any misconceptions that you think they have?
Yeah, so you know, a lot of people have this assumption like, yeah, they're getting hazard pay, they're getting, you know, I feel like that comes around a lot, and people feel like, you know, we feel safe while every customer that we interact with, we know that we're putting ourselves at risk. And the sentiment that all of us have is we just want people to stay home. As much as they're providing us a paycheck, as much as we're grateful that we can work during this time, we really don't want to put ourselves and our families and the rest of the community at risk. And I feel like, you know, customers really need to keep in mind, you know, when you go shopping, just go by yourself, you know, shop for your neighbors if you can, don't bring your whole family. Try to plan out your shopping for the week. You don't just shop them. You can limit the amount of times that you're going to the grocery store. I feel like too, that sometimes, I feel like it's important wearing masks and, however you need to protect yourself and uh, uh, prevent the spread of do disposable gloves actually work? How do masks work and how do they protect you in order to not give yourself a sense of false security? I've noticed, touching your car handle, touching all the groceries on the shelf, your purse, your credit card, all with the same pair of gloves, know, while you have that sense that, oh, you're wearing gloves, everything's fine, really that's not what's happening. So stay at home is the big one. Educate yourself on what's actually going on with the virus itself, how it's spread, what you can do to prevent the spread, and really just being supportive and thankful to your essential workers, not just frontline employees such as myself, but also, your nurses, your doctors, anyone like that, and just giving us the encouragement and the patience that we need during this time. And there are also a lot of great, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there are organizations and foundations and like funds being set up to support workers who are in some rocky situations, both those who are not employed anymore, such as restaurant workers, but also frontline employees to help us out in case something happens medically.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you've done an amazing job, I guess, at representing essential workers and representing the community perspective. I think when you stay home, when you social distance, when you take those safety precautions, you're helping everyone. And I think that's what's really important here. And one thing that I was just curious about, since we are talking part of EVM, entrepreneurship, do you predict any, I guess, new trends in like the realm of supermarkets or just in the realm of the field that you're working in right now?
Yeah, so one of the really interesting things, and I guess it was somewhat expected, but contactless retail has been a very important part of the economy right now. You're talking your Instacart shoppers, you feel like while a lot of those systems have been in place, they weren't really expecting to have this large of a consumer base. So I can definitely see some fields opening up on more efficient ways and more effective ways to have contactless shopping, essentially. So yeah, I feel like that's definitely going to be a growing field once this pandemic ends, as we start to analyze our response to it and how we can prevent things like this in the future. I think trying to figure out how stores and other establishments can have contactless services, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think they were already kind of on the rise, but after this situation, it's just completely turning a lot of the infrastructure that we already had.
Yeah, and even to put kind of like a little bit more perspective into that. So the community base that I serve in particular, I live in a retirement community. So most of my customers are in the at-risk group. So we have seen just an influx of, people calling the store like, do you guys do curbside pickup? Do you do home delivery? Do you do these kinds of services? I've seen more Instacart shoppers than I've ever seen in all of my time working there. So it's been interesting to see that like these more effective communities utilizing these resources that typically aren't in those areas anyways, because we're not like a large city or anything like that. So seeing how they can kind of focus their marketing into those areas, I think that's going
really
to be interesting.
What?
Okay, awesome. I think, Hunter, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about or add?
I don't think so. I think we've covered most of our bases here.
Hearing your input, I think it's very inspiring. Sacrifice your health for the sake of others and really make sacrifices in support for things like that. And I think what you're doing is really inspirational and brave. So thank you so much, Hunter. And thank you so much for giving your input. And if
Yeah.
there's any way that there's any resources that we can help, or just
Mhm.
anything that you know will help essential workers, please let us know so we could share it.
Yeah, definitely. I will. We'll see what we can do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hunter, for coming to talk with us today. It was a great time. So thank you. Signing
Thank
off.
you
you for
so
having
much
me.
for all of your hard work.